Hey, I just want to show a little bit of a bedliner machine that's super affordable, that you don't get to see a whole lot of. I did a lot of research before getting into bedliners, and, or I guess jumping into buying a machine that I can run at high pressure. And there just wasn't a whole lot available out there online, on YouTube. Nobody talked a whole lot about their setups. Everybody buys, the name brand one, but I don't want to spend $20,000 on a machine that's going to take a lot of bedliners to pay itself off. This one is by company Talenco, or I'm not exactly 100% how you spell it, but that's the plate right there. I did a lot of research on them. I read about them. They're a company based out of China, and so yes, it is a Chinese product, but I'll get to why I went with it here in a few minutes. I researched a lot. I did a lot of emailing back and forth with them before I made my purchase, just because, of course, I didn't want to get screwed on it. When you're trying to send thousands of dollars overseas, you kind of want to make sure you're going to get your money's worth. So I did do a lot of back and forth with them beforehand, but I also looked at, they ship worldwide, and have a lot of really good spray products. They were really good to work with me on what I was after. Do I want to spray foam? Do I want to spray bedliners? Do I want the ability to spray both? So for those of you wanting to spray foam, you don't need this machine. You can get one a step down. The heating system in this one is what allows me to spray bedliners with it. You have to get polyurea hotter than you do the foam when you're spraying it. So that's why I went with this one. It's just the bigger one, I guess you could call it, with the higher heat controls on it. So this model right here, I decided to go with this Chinese one because, one, this thing, base price, if you get it bare bones, you don't buy any extra stuff, is going to be around $6,000. That doesn't include shipping, and it doesn't include all the extras that I bought with it. That is one hell of a good price. You could basically spray one set of drums to get your money's worth out of it. I just went the extra mile. I bought a few other things, and wanted to make sure I could guarantee if I got this thing, not seeing it in person, I had enough parts to make it keep going if it went down, and not having to keep ordering. So I've got this cover off here so you can see these are just some basic relays. These work for the heating system. I've got it turned on right now. It's got a master on and off right here. So it shows the voltage, so you flip it off, flip it on, voltage climbs up. I specifically asked him to wire this one for 240, 220, whatever you want to call it. It has a counter on it. Now the counter, they couldn't tell me exactly what that actually meant. They said spray out a set of drums, go back and figure out what your count was. So I actually tracked that on my barrel right there as to what I sprayed. The heating system on it is, this is your heated hose. This needs to sit on for a long time. If you start prepping a bedliner, and there it clicks the relay for the heated hose, which goes those two orange lines right there. You need to kick that one on when you start prepping, because I usually get this to like 59, 60 on, this is where it's actually at, and this is your preset. This is all in Celsius. So yes, it's not Fahrenheit, but it works all right for me. So if I remember right, 85 degrees is like around 160 degrees Fahrenheit. So anyway, this usually won't get above 60, maybe 61 until you have the two side heaters on, the ISO and the poly side. So the heaters are behind these right here, and you kick them on and you'll hear the relays pop. Boom. Kick that one and that one. Now I don't run these ones for very long because this is part of my trial and error, because once you kick those on, the heated hose rises it up about 1500 on this side, and I got about 2000 on this side. That went from 0 to 2000 psi just from heating the hose. So you watch here for just a second, and having these on will make our pressure rise even more You can just see that one start climbing already. Anyway, these will climb clear up over 5,000 PSI if you leave them on. So I turn these on just a few minutes before I start spraying, but those get so hot that they don't make your hose temperature rise as you spray. This right here, I've had a few issues with, and one of them was my gauge, and this gauge even isn't as good. This one leaks as well, but the other gauge just stopped working completely. So they offered to send me a new one, and all I had to do was pay for shipping, but shipping was more than what it was to just buy one. I think this was $25 on Amazon or $30, and it was gonna be like $60 to ship a new one to me. They, like I say, they were gonna offer a free one, but I told them never mind, I'll just buy one here stateside. Like I say, really good customer service on their part. As far as the rest of this thing goes, you turn on your air cylinder when you're ready to start, you turn on the air when you're ready to start spraying. I've made my own labels and kind of did like a startup and shut down because, like I say, I was new to it. The controls back here are very, very simple as well. This is why I went with this, is because we're just dealing with switching and relays and digital readout. Very, very simple, very, very easy to do. Only thing I had to figure out on this one that took me a little bit is I had an electrician come over and look. We had to add the ground right there. They put a ground on the back of it, but I just was dumber in the post and couldn't figure it out. So they helped me out with that, or an electrician helped me out with that to get it wired up. Otherwise, everything works great. But the parts for this, and including this big air cylinder back here, are very, very, very like common parts to come by. And I bought a lot of spare parts. You got relay pack back here. The other thing I've had problems with is this little cylinder is for the oil for it. That has cracked several times, and so I was going to have to wait to get a new one coming, but instead I realized it was very similar to one of my Harbor Freight air filters, water separators. And so I just bought a couple of them from Harbor Freight so I'd have some spares. I've gone through two of them over the last, well, this thing's been going for about 6 months, not actually working. The other thing that broke is there's a little thing right here that usually goes on. I just capped it off. It gives you the ability to adjust how much oil goes in and out of it. I just add a little oil to that cup as I use it to try and keep it going and keep the oil coming through it. But I just do it like every other spray, so that way I don't have to worry about ordering those parts. Those were the faulty parts though on this thing. Other than that, like, everything has worked great. It just took me a little while to get this thing going. I've had it for almost a year now. I think I'm like a month, maybe 2 months away from having this for a year, but I've only had it running properly for about 6 months. It took me a while to figure out how to wire it, and then I kept having problems with my gun. So this is actually not the gun that came with it. This is the Fusion Probler P2 from Graco, and I kept, like I said, it was a learning curve on this. So what we had was these heaters, I would turn them all on as I'd get ready, and I'd be prepping the bed, and I wouldn't realize the pressure was going up over and getting too high. So what I found was, okay, I need to leave the heaters off other than the heated hose, and I leave the air cylinder off as well until I'm ready to spray. And that way I can keep an eye on my pressures, because my pressures were getting so high that I actually ended up having the valves on the gun that came with it. These completely failed. Now I ordered spare valves. That was one of the things I ordered when I originally got it. And I went through those too, and it was the learning curve. I didn't know what I was doing with this setup. And so once I realized that, oh, leave all the heat off except for the heated hose, you don't have any problems with these valves. So maybe their gun would have worked, maybe not, I don't know. When I did spray with their gun, they sent me a flat tip and a round tip, and I couldn't get it to mix quite right. And so the last time I went to use the gun they sent me, of course the pressure went up, and I let it sit too long, and I had fluid all throughout every little inch of that gun, and just completely seized it up. And then taking it apart, I ended up breaking apart on it because I was going to soak it to get it cleaned up. So I just said the hell with it and went and ordered this. This gun is expensive. I think it's like $2,800, but I haven't had any problems with this. That being said, part of the problems was my learning curve. I might have been able to just to put one of the Graco chambers and mixing tips on their gun and made it work. And that was actually my plan until I, of course, froze the whole thing up by letting the pressure set in it. So this is the only thing that I have, I wished I could have tried to get their gun to work, because their gun is like $500. It's way, way better price. Extra hoses from them, $500. They are really, really awesome on the pricing. One thing I didn't know, when you order, or when you want to spray bed liners, you actually do have to get a blender. This right here is air controlled, and it mixes the drum. You got to mix the poly side on it because it needs to have the resin and the dye mixed up before you shoot each day. Drum heaters and get them off the floor was another thing I didn't realize. Luckily, this company, Bullet Liners, I got contacted by them, and Steele from Bullet actually came up here to my shop and helped me out and helped me get a lot of this figured out. He sent me these drums, and we've just been rocking and rolling ever since. Great company to work with, great product, absolutely love it. Back to the machine, it comes with 2 drum pumps, comes with the gauges, comes with all this air line, the main pump hoses that go into the back of the machine, a big main air line. You do need to have a few other things too in place. You need to have an air cooler, or it chills the air coming out of the compressor, because you run the compressor so high that water you get vapor in the lines. You need to have one of those, I guess you'd call it a water separator, but these kind that you see like this, and this, and the one right there, those aren't enough to keep your air water-free, moisture-free. You have to get one of those chillers. So I actually bought a Harbor Freight one because they had great reviews on it, and that thing's been working great for us. So back to this machine. I'm going to demo it here in a few minutes, and I'm just going to shoot a tailgate today. It's just an easy one, but I'll demo it, and then we'll record it from the corner and kind of let you see how it works. Like I said, great machine. Just had a learning curve, had to figure out a lot of stuff that there's just not a lot of information out there on. So it was just a little frustrating. And then we've had a few parts go bad that I've had to just figure out on my own, like that little boiler cup and the little valve on top of it. That was kind of a doozy, because, well, what the hell do you do now? Got to order parts from China, overnight parts from China. Anyway, we'll shoot this here in a minute, and we'll go from there. A few more things before I shoot this bed liner. All said and done with this machine, I chose to do the FedEx shipping to get it here quicker. It got stuck in customs in China and ended up being just as long as if I had sent it on the boat. The shipping on that was, I think it was like $1,500. And then it was supposed to be here in 7 days, and I went with that option because the tracking number I knew through FedEx would just be easier, and I'd be more comfortable knowing right where it was sitting. But it still took forever to clear customs anyways, and so I should have just paid the other shipping route, which I think was like $500, and it comes in a big wooden crate with everything for you. The one thing I didn't account for when I ordered this was I had to pay the new import tax, which is extremely high. So I had to pay another $1,700 to get that import tax taken care of. So that put me up closer. I think I was like around like almost 9,000 or a little more at that point. So one thing you guys just want to make sure you account for is all these numbers do end up adding up to a little more than what it initially started as. The other thing, excuse our mess, we use the Bedliner bay for the garbage pile. I ended up having to get enough CFM to run this thing. So I had one compressor, and it is 11.5 CFM at 90 PSI, and I thought that would be enough to run it, but it was not, so we ended up having to do another one. I was gonna buy a bigger single, but the price was not as efficient. These are like $550 a piece, brand new at Home Depot. There's your numbers on it. It's a Husky, and they really only use about 15 amps of current each. So I actually have these hooked together on one breaker, but that puts my CFM over 20. So that way it's enough to power it. Because that was another thing, part of the learning curve that I went through is, why is it not mixing correctly? Because it would spray good, then it would not mix correct, and then it would spray good, not mix correct, and so it'd make a gooey, sloppy mess. So don't make that mistake. For around $1,100, you can get 2 of these, put them together, and you have plenty. Otherwise, like a 25 CFM compressor, they run you, what are they, like $2,000, right around there. So for half that price, like I say, I'm a budget guy, half that price, you can just get 2 of these, hook them together into one. And this is the air cooler. This thing, Harbor Freight, this is the second one I had. The first one came, and the same little part that they had where the water would collect, it looked very similar to this as well. It broke on the first one within a couple days, so they sent me this one. It broke in a couple days. They just, for whatever reason, are handling the pressure. I'm running 150 PSI, and when the machine is running, it runs at about 120 for both of them together. So I just piped off of it, made this, put a valve on the bottom of it, and I just drain that valve where the water gets condensed and separated right there before it goes out. And that has worked great. Like you say, big learning curve, lots of problems. That's why it took me so long to get this thing running. I also put an air line up there because that's on our outside. I do plan on moving my machine back here into my storage room when I get more stuff cleaned up. Okay, here's the final product as to how it finished out. You see why we just sprayed what part that we sprayed, because they have the cap already. Obviously this looks great compared to, there's your texture, compared to what the old one does, but get in with your auto body shops if it's something you're gonna get into doing, because they will feed you a lot of business with doing repair jobs.